of you today. Before I start, could I just take a picture to put up on the Wayside Facebook page? Maybe some fists in the air. Just give a shout out to all the people who, like me, are so happy that you all are out here today. Thank you.
Family photo.
So, one of the reasons that this is so exciting to be here is because, from the perspective of somebody who's been doing community organizing work consistently for a long period of time, at times when it's really lonely and not very glamorous feeling, what's happening right now with Occupy really looks like a true people's movement for justice. And what I mean by that is when a movement is not something that an organizer or even a network of organizers can create, a movement has to rise up. It's something that it can't be controlled. The political parties and the national organizations can't co-opt it and shift it into the direction that they want to go. It's something that's going to happen whether organizers want it to happen or not. And that's what I see happening with Occupy, and it's really exciting. It's also something that's shown that it can't be stopped by police busting up some encampments. There's been this coordinated strategy of busting up the camps all across the country at the same time, and what's happening everywhere seems to look a lot like what's happening in Richmond. People are coming together, they're hunkering down, they're talking about how can we survive, how can we keep this going through the winter, how can we make this long term, and I really commend you all for doing that, and so happy that it's happening in Charlottesville and in Norfolk and in Virginia Beach and in places all across the country too. So the moment right now calls on us to ask, what are those next steps? Where are we going to go with this? There's some pretty good analysis out there right now calling for Occupy movement to keep open the biggest umbrella possible, to embrace some tactics and some rhetoric that allow ordinary, everyday people from all walks of life to come into this space, to resonate and relate to what's going on and have a place at the table and feel like they have a stake in what's going on. And I can appreciate that. That's definitely true. I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia, in a working class family. My earliest memories were seeing my dad take his hard hat and his lunchbox and get on the bus to the Norfolk Naval Shipyard where he worked as a submarine mechanic. And visiting him in the VA hospital when I was about 4 years old when a stuck piston smashed the lower half of his face. And my dad paid into Social Security every week of his life. It wasn't voluntary, it wasn't a choice that he was making. He's worked hard for 40 years for what he's had. And I've seen his retirement plan get destroyed by speculators in the big banks, lose tens of thousands of dollars of his retirement. I'm hearing people talk about Social Security as if it's an entitlement plan. It's not an entitlement plan. This is something that he paid into every day of his life. It's something that he's got coming from him. But the debate is being shifted like that all around us. Like the ground has shifted so hard it's hard to even keep our feet and know where we stand. And part of what's happening in that war of stories, war of myths, what's going on, is we're being very effectively turned against each other. And I don't know if people are even being paid to troll the comments section of the news articles right now, but how many times have you seen people saying to get out of your tent and quit whining, don't expect anybody to take care of you, we've all got to carry our own weight. Like, how bad does the unemployment rate have to be before people realize that all of us want to be out there working, that all of us want to be making our own contribution? During the occupation of the Wisconsin Capitol last year, we heard a lot of people saying, what are these public service employees whining about? I don't have good benefits like that. I don't have good health care. They need to accept it and live in the real world like the rest of us. Well, when did that become our mantra to live by? Sucks for me, so it might as well suck for you too, and we're trying to like prop up a system that's goal is to bring us all down to the lowest level? No, so Occupy movement is really exciting to me because it's showing that people have had enough, that people are waking up, that we're not going to pay the way for the fat cats at the top who have brought this economy to its knees and expect the budgets to be balanced on our backs. So right now we've got this moment, like what is Occupy going to be? Where is it going to go next? a lot of people who've been out here organizing in the trenches, we're really wondering that too. We're deeply engaged in our own ongoing struggles, and we might not have the time to be out here in a tent with you, to be at all the frequent General Assembly meetings, but we're here and we want to work together and we want to figure out together like what's the best path forward. How can we turn this into not just a spontaneous people's movement that rises up, is really dramatic for a few months and then goes out with a bang, but one that really gets connected at a deep level to struggles for justice that have been and are ongoing throughout our community for a long time. So there's a question about when we say have a big umbrella that's going to welcome everybody in. It's like, well, what do we stand for then? We have to draw the line somewhere. And this is my opinion, but I think we have to move beyond just the big picture economic issues that we're talking about. We've got to move beyond just busting up big banks. That's part of the prospect, but that's not all of the picture. We've got to talk about more than just ending the Fed. That's not everything. These big picture important economic issues are there, but we've got to look at what's going on in our own communities too. We've got to look at whose voices have been excluded from power and decision making, not just with what's going on right now, but what's been going on for a long time. So we looked at, we stopped at the Richmond Federal Courthouse today, and we talked about that immigration raid that happened there when 33 parents went to work that day and never came home to be with their families again. So that's a really big community and a potentially well-organized community that's not represented among us today. But we were working with that group. We met with those 33 families. We did some community organizing. We tried to respond. We had a group of people who were able to get out to other factories when raids were in process because we had friends who were working and organizing on the inside. We had white allies out there taking pictures of the license plates, so the cop cars there, following up, helping people figure out how you find out where somebody went when they're in jail, when they're in immigrant detention. And the vestiges of that work still exist in Richmond, but those people from that community aren't here today. I saw some outreach materials from Occupy Richmond, which was great. The schedule was published in Spanish. People were invited in their own language to come and be here today. But what would have happened if they had come? If I was a monolingual Spanish-speaking immigrant and somebody handed me a flyer that was all in Spanish, I'd probably assume I'd be able to understand something that was going on when I got there, instead of maybe just being kind of a peripheral person who's adding a little color to the mix but not able to fully participate. And anything I say that sounds critical, I really offer it with love and respect for all that what you're doing and with the intent of being helpful. But if you want to reach out to communities, you've got to make it possible for everybody to participate there. You've got to develop relationships with people who English might not be their first language or might not speak English at all. You've got to learn about interpretation, resources. I had actually invited an interpreter to be with me today just in case, but she had car trouble on the way down. Oh, here she is, Carolina. And so I'll just ask, because Carolina, would you just ask, is there anybody here who needs Spanish language interpretation?
¿Hay alguien aquí que necesite el idioma del español, traducirlo en español?
Thank you. Okay, so that's good. It's not a hard process to get used to. If you can do mic check, you can do consecutive interpretation. It's just about exactly the same, and we can help connect you with resources to make that possible. One more thing, I just want to say that I noticed, like, it's a mostly white group. I'm really happy to see that there's some diversity in the crowd and that there's some good outreach going on, but it's a mostly white crowd operating in a city that has a very racially charged history. And for white activists who want to be good allies to communities of color, it really requires us being very careful about how we conduct ourselves and how we relate. So one example was when we were at Bank of America today, and probably a middle-aged African-American woman was a security guard, and she came out and, yeah, she was a little over the top, aggressive, and telling us to leave. And she got mic checked, and an overwhelmingly white crowd turned around and yelled at her, "We're not going anywhere." That's a pretty appropriate response to a security guard working for a big bank trying to kick us out of there. But it's not necessarily the best response for an overwhelmingly white crowd to an African-American woman who's working and trying to pull down a living. How about, no disrespect to you, ma'am, we understand you're just trying to do your job, but we're not going anywhere. It's the same message, but a really, really important distinction. And some of us have been working on multicultural organizing in this city for a really long time, and the way we all engage our activism, it reflects on each other. So it's really, really important to have an anti-oppression and anti-racist analysis built into the work that we do, and an anti-racist practice into the way we go about things, and that involves some training. It involves being very strategic about which groups we're going to reach out to and build alliances with if we want this crowd here to more closely reflect the racial makeup of the city around us, because that's how we're really going to build power, right? So there are some existing organizations that have been working for a long time. Some of us have been gathering for several years now with the Virginia People's Assembly. I think the information's out there. Occupy is definitely invited. That's a great chance to come out and connect with a multiracial group of organizers who are rooted in existing struggles, and I really encourage everybody to participate. I really encourage your training and education group to keep on going with the training work that you're doing, and specifically to prioritize an anti-oppression, anti-racist analysis in the way that you're getting yourselves trained. There's so many people who are excluded. Like we've really got to be aware that the experience of walking into a space like this might be really different for a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender person, and we can't just assume that everybody understands that we're people of goodwill and that we welcome everybody. We've got to say actively that gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender people, your struggle is part of our liberation too, and that counts, and that's really important to us. So, and I'd just like to close by saying that there are experienced organizers out here. We're really excited about working with you in partnership to make some of these connections and keep them going. And I really liked the music earlier. We don't have enough singing at our events always, so I'm going to invite you to join me in a song to close, because I especially think it's important that we learn